Hello again. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, here for Silicon Dojo, where we are creating authorityless, gatekeeperless, free to the end user technology education designed to empower you to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do with technology. Now, I will remind everybody out there watching this, free to the end user isn't actually free. Stuff costs money, screens cost money, lots of things cost money. So if you would like to support what I'm doing to continue to allow me to create content for the people that can't afford it, please think about throwing some money down in the crowdfunding link, probably down below, down beside, whatever else. Currently, as I do this video, we use donor bucks. I don't know, in the future we might use something else. Anyways, the class that we're going to be doing today is operational and physical security and cybersecurity. Yeah, right? Hopefully that's going to get some people motivated at home. For some reason, I don't really understand why, but when you talk about operational and physical security, that seems really cool. When you talk about, security policies for your employees, that seems lame. I don't understand why. Can I just say this is the third class in this series. The last class I did, was it an employee security policy, whatever the hell it was called? That class is actually probably a little bit more important than this class. But, it's kind of one of those things that you have to understand if you're going to be a professional in the technology world, especially in cybersecurity, is there are the things that sound cool and exciting, and the things that actually are cool and exciting. Most of the time, those two things are not the same. Again, I talk about the technology I'm really excited for. Again, I'm excited for serverless architecture. I'm excited for Azure cognitive services. So many people in the computer world right now, they're talking about VR, they're talking about blockchain, they're talking about a lot of things I just do not care about. I will admit, I just do not care about cryptocurrency. Whatever, right? But what I think is really cool is these Azure cognitive services. That's what nobody else cares about. So one of the things you do have to be careful of when you're going to be a technology professional is, are you focusing on what sounds important, or are you focusing on what is important? Those are two entirely different critters. So anyways, operational and physical security is actually important. Don't get me wrong. Stay here, don't go away. But again, employee security policies, maintenance contracts, all of that kind of stuff is on the same level as this. So anyways, when we talk about operational and physical security, it's good to understand what we are actually talking about. Operational security is different than physical security, which is also different than surveillance, which is also different than deterrence. These are all separate things. Why it's important to understand these are separate things is because if you understand what each of these concepts are, it is much easier to build a plan to deal with each individual one of these concepts to create an overall good security environment. What you have to understand is at the end of the day, you want a good security environment, like the entire environment should be secure. But to do that, there's all of these different little things. Again, think about this with the actual technology. Firewalls defend ports. Antivirus defends from viruses. Backups defend from your storage arrays failing, that type of thing. These are all individual components that come together to hopefully give you a robust and resilient infrastructure. Hopefully. And there are computers. Anyways, the same thing is true when you're thinking about the overall security landscape, is you have operational security, you have physical security, you have surveillance, you have deterrence, you have your technological products. All of these things together create your overall security environment. And so what's important is that you focus on each individual concept, figure out how you can improve that particular area to improve the whole. So anyways, when we talk about operational security is around how your organization operates. And this is very important, especially in the modern world, because have you heard? We are at war. That's right. If you go out there, again, all the kids, the kids aren't like Eli, the computer guy, the ones that are investing all of their money in cryptocurrencies and VR and whatever the hell else that they're doing. They're doing that because we are in the middle of a cyber war. We're in a war with, I don't know, China or Russia or North Korea or Zimbabwe. I don't know. Are we in a war with Zimbabwe? Probably at this point in time. Anyways, there's this idea that we are at a war, right? This is a war that you can't even see. Which, again, war is war. I just want to put that out there to people. War is war. When you keep calling everything a war, just, it takes away the power of the word. But there is this idea that we're in the middle of a cyber war, and all these people are trying to attack everybody else, and blase, 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 blase. And so what's interesting to think about in this type of security environment is if you're in a war, if legitimate targets in this war are civilian infrastructure, civilian organizations, and the whole 9 yards, well, why would you want to give the enemy, those damn people over in Zimbabwe, why do you want to give them information about how your organization actually operates? Right? That's the whole thing, right? When you think about warfare, when you think about actual warfare, one of the big things is destroying the resources of the other side. If you can destroy the power grid, if you can destroy bridges, if you can destroy water purification plants in the whole 9 yards, right? You don't necessarily have to take out, all of their tanks. You just destroy the water purification facilities so they can no longer get clean water, and then all the tank commanders start cracking themselves to death, and you win. War sucks. We don't want war. War is a bad thing. Anyways, right? And so one of the things to be thinking about, again, this modern world where everybody thinks we're in this cyber war or whatever, is if you are running an organization, do you want to provide information to the enemy about how your organization operates so that they can target your vulnerabilities? Right? Think about this. Think about if you have some Zimbabwean hackers. We all know those Zimbabwean hackers. Anyway, you got those Zimbabwean hackers out there, and they decide they're gonna take your company down, right? You have offended Zimbabwe. They're gonna take you down. And so they decide to start hacking your Azure infrastructure. Oh no, Eli. Oh no, what are we gonna do? They're gonna attack our Azure infrastructure. I'm not even sure what to do because we use AWS. Think about this. If the hackers or attackers of any kind are going after your infrastructure and they go to attack your Azure infrastructure, which you literally do not have, maybe you have like one web server up and running on Azure, everything else is on AWS, then even if they do compromise it, what are they actually getting? Right? That's one of the things to be thinking about with operational security. Operational security is just simply not allowing the antagonist, not allowing the attacker to know how the hell your operations run. Your enemy should not know who the hell your CTO is. That would be stupid. This is my own thing. Like every cybersecurity class I'm going to do, I'm going to scream about all the CTOs that are broadcasting their positions on LinkedIn. But anyways, right, if you're looking for a target to go after, if you're looking to spearfish somebody, again, think about this from a hacker standpoint, right? You want to spearfish. So spearfishing is when you send a nefarious email to people, trying to get them to click on something and either install a virus onto their computer or get them to log into a fake site so that you can get their credentials and all that kind of thing, right? And so if you do a phishing attack that goes out to everybody, that's not very effective. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to do a spear phishing attack. I don't really want the credentials of the frickin' secretary. That's not going to get me much. But if I can get the credentials of the CTO, that's very important. So, if I can go on to LinkedIn, I can search your company. I can search who the CTO is. All of that information pops up. Well, then I know who to attack, right? If I'm trying to compromise your server room, or if I'm trying to compromise your network closets, right, where all the data's going around, your switches, your routers, all of that kind of stuff, somebody wants to sneak in, they want to put in their little Raspberry Pi with Kali Linux and nmap the hell out of your infrastructure. Right, well, here's the thing. What if they're wandering around your building and they can't figure out where the hell the networking closets are? They're like, I have a Raspberry Pi. I'm going to get your infrastructure. And they run around your building and they can't figure out where the hell your networking equipment is. Right? That's operational security. They're not getting to the door. It's not that they come to a door that is locked. They don't come to a surveillance system. They literally don't even know what door to walk into to compromise your infrastructure. And so that is what we're talking about when we are talking about operational security. It is the how. How does your infrastructure operate, and who is valuable to your infrastructure? And I swear to crikey, if you are a CTO or you're a CIO right now and you're watching this frickin' video and your information is on LinkedIn, I don't like you very much right now. Just because all the other cool, stupid kids are doing it doesn't mean you should do it too. Again, this is a big problem we have in the modern world. Again, please understand, I came from the military world. I literally have a degree in criminal justice, plus a whole bunch of different things. When I come into the security environment, I have a different viewpoint than a lot of the 22-year-olds out there. And one of the biggest frustrations is so many people feel that because other people are doing it, they should do it too. But Eli, what do you mean I can't broadcast to the world that I'm the CTO of this company? Everybody else on LinkedIn is doing it. Yes, just because every other CTO on LinkedIn is a frickin' moron doesn't mean that you should be one too. So again, operational security. Well, we will talk a little bit more about social media. This is just the thing that I'm currently banging on at this moment just because it's so absurdly stupid. Physical security then is where you actually use some kind of physical equipment, physical devices, that type of thing, to prevent theft or damage to your infrastructure. So physical security is a door. Physical security are locks. Physical security is access control systems. Physical security is that type of thing. So operational is how your organization works, and then physical security is if they actually do figure out how your organization works, how to keep them out of the damn server room when they try to get in. Then the next thing that I want to talk about, again, having this background, one of the issues you get into is there are things that are security and there are things that are not security. And one of the things that makes me lose my mind in the real world, I actually had to deal with clients with this type of thing, is the idea that surveillance systems are security. They're not. Surveillance systems, it's in the name, are surveillance, right? When you put a digital surveillance system in, a video surveillance system in, an audio surveillance system in, the whole 9 yards, basically what this does is it gives you eyeballs into an area where you may not have people with physical eyeballs in that area, right? So you have 100 cameras. All of those cameras come back into some kind of security operations center, and you got this big ass screen with 100 different camera feeds coming in. You have one person now looking at 100 different camera feeds, all spread out of 50 acres, right? That's what surveillance does. It allows like one person to be able to see the overall environment. It also allows you to record what happened. So when the hacker goes into your infrastructure and steals your server, you'll be able to like, look, see, they stole the server. You will have a recording of when you got screwed by that hacker. Here's the thing, right? Surveillance without a plan is basically pretty worthless, and in many times surveillance itself is actually pretty worthless, right? So again, if you have cameras feeding back to a security operations center, you have a person monitoring the feeds in the security operations center, and they have a plan for action when they see something that isn't quite right. That overall is something that is actually valuable, and that overall thing, that can be considered security, right? So if I'm sitting there watching 100 camera feeds, I see in one of the camera feeds, somebody has a crowbar and they're breaking into the server room, and that's not the end of it, and I can call somebody up and say, somebody is breaking into the server room, I need you to go and tell them to stop. Or call the police, or whatever else. All of that is security. I ran into this, I had a client of mine back in Baltimore City, like the best place for stories of stupid crap and security and all that. And one of the big problems was they had a dog grooming company. They had a dog grooming company, and they had two issues. One was there was graffiti. People were spray painting the side. They had a beautiful wall. It was like a big old billboard. I have to say, if I was going to graffiti, I'd graffiti the hell out of their wall. So anyways, they're having a lot of graffiti on their property. And then the other thing is the crackheads in Baltimore were so stupid. They didn't understand that a grooming facility doesn't deal with, animal drugs. And so they had these little biohazard boxes, So, whenever something nasty comes out of a dog when they're grooming it, they put it into a bag and they put it in the biohazard box. They let somebody else deal with it. Their biggest problems, I crap you not, one of their biggest problems, these crackheads were breaking into biohazard boxes and stealing the biohazard. Seriously. They weren't stealing aspirin. They were literally stealing the crap that was supposed to go to the incinerator. Anyway, so I get called to go out there, spec out a digital surveillance system, the whole 9 yards. And one of the things I explained to the woman is I was sitting there, and we were looking at the big old place in our building, and she's like, yeah, I want a camera to be able to document when they graffiti the building. And I looked at her and said, okay, but you do know that's not going to stop the graffitiing of your building. What? Well, you're going to have a recording of your building getting graffitied. And most likely the quality of it isn't going to be enough to actually get anybody arrested. And this is Baltimore, where even if they do get arrested, they don't actually get prosecuted. That's its own asinine story as far as Baltimore is concerned. And so one of the things I suggested to her is, hey, why don't you plant a whole bunch of bushes? It's like the reason people are graffitiing your big-ass wall is because it's a beautiful big-ass wall. So if you put in some nice, big, tall bushes, then it becomes no longer a good place to graffiti, and that actually solves your problem, right? The other thing is with the biohazard box. We were talking about, it's like, okay, well, you're going to have surveillance of people breaking into your biohazard box and stealing stuff that was supposed to go to the incinerator. Like, what are you gonna do with that? Like, what? This is something where you need more of a physical security. Lock up the biohazard box. Keep the biohazard boxes in your premises until you know somebody's actually going to come from the whatever the place that's getting it. Then actually put it out like the night before or whatever. You need to be thinking about a different way of you need to be thinking about physical security with this. You need to be thinking about deterrence with this versus video surveillance. I told her, I was like, look, you're gonna pay me a crap ton of money so that you can sit there and rewatch when you get screwed every other week, right? Something to be thinking about there. And then deterrence, right? Deterrence is a big thing, and this is something you need to be thinking about in the cybersecurity world. Deterrence is used to keep people from deciding to attack your organization. How can you deter people from deciding to go after your organization? Again, when we talk about that big wall with graffiti getting sprayed on it, again, the reason it was getting graffitied, it was a beautiful wall for graffiti, to be frank with you. And so if you put some nice big old bushes in front of that big ass wall, it now no longer becomes a valuable place to put graffiti. It no longer has that value proposition. When you think about things like deterrence, this is where you think about, do you have a lighting systems for your property, right? If you have a lot of bright lights at night, that deters people from coming into your property. Little things like boundaries. So if you actually own your building or something like that, there's this weird psychological thing with lines. Again, security is a fascinating thing. Please, if you're actually interested in cybersecurity, do much more research into security itself. It's amazing how the human brain works. And kind of bizarre too. Like there's this interesting thing with lines. Like people just, they don't like to cross lines for some reason. And they did research about this. And like if you have like an office building or whatever, and you have a problem with people crossing through your property, you have a problem with homeless people, the whole 9 yards, right? One of the most interesting things you can do is you can plant like tiny bushes. I'm talking about tiny bushes. I'm not talking about big old bushes. I'm talking about tiny bushes, right? You plant like these 1-foot bushes in a long line by your building, right? So you have a sidewalk, and then you plant these small bushes in a line by your building. And psychologically, people look at that and go, ugh! Like again, psychologically to them, for a lot of them, it's almost like there's a big ass fence in front of them. Like, oh, that's a line. Oh, I'm not going to cross that line, right? They talk about that like with elephants, right? If you put a rope around an elephant's leg when they were a baby, then by the time they're an adult, you can have the same rope connected to the same little stake, and they won't go anywhere because they just assume they will not be able to escape. The same thing is kind of psychologically true with things like lines and all that kind of thing. When you think about deterrence, is just people, when you put something there, that specifically says you are not supposed to cross this, a lot of people, they go, oh, well, I guess I'm not supposed to cross this, right? You can think about this with deterrence. You go into a lot of office places, you go into a lot of places, and you'll see like big ass signs, authorized personnel only, right? Anybody can walk through that door. And let's be honest, done it in the past, you can walk through the door, and most likely nobody will scream with you on the other side. But it's deterrent. I'm not supposed to go in there because I'm not authorized. It's little psychological tricks. And again, with deterrence, no, if somebody really wants to come after your company, if those Zimbabwean hackers are going to take you down, they're not going to worry about little bushes. They're not going to worry about, authorized people only or whatever else. But the reality is most crime and most attacks against organizations, they're not coming from the highly sophisticated Zimbabwean hackers. They're coming from morons. I would like to do a research study and find out how much money is lost from homeless people doing stupid crap on company property versus the Zimbabwean hackers. So anyways, so these are different things, and so you need to be thinking about them differently. And again, the people that will become involved with solving this particular problem. So when you talk about things like operational security, this is going to be your office manager, right? The office manager that's responsible for all the secretaries and all in HR and that type of thing. This is a very human-centric task, right? So you have to go out there, you have to talk with people, you have to create documentation, you have to create training courses, you have to do books, that kind of stuff, paperwork kind of crap, right? Physical security, that gets into a lot of technology stuff sometimes, that gets into construction, so you may have to bring in the facilities people. So if you have a building, you most likely have professional facilities people. They're the ones that go out, they hire contractors, they understand how the permitting process, again, right, as a cybersecurity expert, have you ever thought about the permitting process for doing modifications to your building? If you want to build out a new server room, you're like, oh, I realize we need better physical security for our servers, and you want to build out a new server room. Do you understand within your your legal area, your county or your city or whatever else, do you understand the permitting requirements that are required for doing what you want to do? Do you know if you're even legally able to make modifications to your building in the way that you want to make modifications to your building? Again, that's going to be, your facilities folks sitting down, talking with contractors and that kind of thing. Again, things like surveillance systems, you can add in, if you have security officers, if you have any kind of professional security at your facility, if you have like 1,000 employee company, you probably have like security officers and that type of thing. You bring in the security people in order to figure out surveillance and all that. And then again, when you come to things like deterrence, deterrence may be landscaping. It's going out there and talking with a landscaper. Well, I think a holly bush would look just lovely here. And all those little spikes will poke the hell out of anybody that tries to come in, right? So these are all different areas of security that's going to require different people to buy into your vision. And do you see where this is going? Relationships. The relationships that you create with the other people in your company are going to be very valuable for all of these different tasks. And again, the other thing I will beat on my drum about, because so many technology people don't want to think about relationships. They want to be armies of one. I did X, Y, or Z. Yeah, the people they're going to have to deal with. Lots of people. Again, as I said, surveillance is not security. Surveillance will show you how to get screwed. One of the things I would say, if you're going to do surveillance, is make the cameras as obvious as possible. This is one of the big problems, is sometimes, everybody wants those micro cameras. Again, the difference between cool and effective, miles apart. And so again, cool little spy cameras are all the rage. Here's the thing, if I'm a criminal, if I'm a hacker, I come into your facility and I look around and I don't see any of your little spy cameras, then I probably don't realize that I'm being recorded. And so, therefore, I'm going to continue doing whatever I'm doing. Again, one of the things you have to think about with something like surveillance is deterrence. There is a camera that is going to document your illegal action so that if you're caught by the police, you will spend a long time in jail. Right? If I walk into an area and I see no cameras, if I don't see the cameras cannot be a deterrent. One of the other things I will warn people, this is an issue that happened in the real world, is also don't use fake cameras, or at least don't use only fake cameras. Like, you may use a fake camera in order to get people to misunderstand how your security system actually works. You have one fake camera here, but then you have 2 cameras from the other side. One of the problems you get to is, like, some people don't want to spend money on surveillance systems. Again, surveillance systems actually cost a decent amount of money, especially good ones. And so they think, well, I'm going to go to eBay and I'm going to buy a $10 fake video camera. Again, when we get into the real legal issues of actually dealing with organizations, do not put up fake security cameras unless you know what the hell you're doing. Literally, back when I was in college, there was a court case where a woman got raped in front of a fake surveillance camera and then sued the ever-loving crap out of the company that had put up the fake surveillance camera. So basically, she was in one of these situations. It was a no-win situation. She was gonna get raped. It was all kinds of bad. She knew where she had seen a surveillance camera, so she was able to manipulate the attacker to attack her, right in front of the surveillance camera, because she felt, well, at least then this will all be documented and they'll get the bastard. Come to find out, it was a fake video camera. And things got very bad for that particular company. Again, something to be thinking about, again, when we're talking about things like security, is the expectation. What are the expectations of people when they see these types of things? If you see that there's a surveillance camera in a public area, your expectation is that it's going to be recording what's going on. Now, for some reason, that surveillance camera failed. If for some reason the storage array where the video files went to, that got corrupted, that you're probably not going to get sued for. There was a failure in the system, but you try to make the system work. If you put up a fake video camera, yeah. One of the things to be thinking about in the modern world of surveillance systems is the thing about adding creepy events, to triggers. So with modern surveillance systems, basically there's this idea of pushing the intelligence to the edge. So if you deal with Axis cameras, AXIS cameras, they've had this for a while. Other IP-based cameras, I'm sure, have this too. Where if an event happens in front of the camera, because the camera now is actually a full-fledged computer, small resources, but full-fledged computer. So if something happens in front of the camera, things can be triggered. So things that can happen is when somebody walks in front of the camera, the lights turn on. Again, you think about deterrence. You're sneaking in the dark. I'm sneaking. All of a sudden, boom, the lights, big ass floodlights come on, and there's a camera sitting there looking at you. You're like, I'm sneaking, right? Other things to be thinking about. What if you play a WAV file when there is motion? Again, that's one of the things you can do with Axis cameras. Somebody comes in, there's a motion, and basically if a camera says, hello, how are you? What? One of the things to think about in the real security world or real policing world, there's something called the continuum of force. The continuum of force is actually 4 layers. The layers we know about, most people know about, is deadly force and then less than lethal force. Not non-lethal. Let's all be clear, it's not non-lethal. Anytime you use physical force against somebody, you might kill the poor person. Anyways, most people know about lethal force and know about less than lethal force. One of the things that people don't realize, though, is that there's actually 2 steps, the first 2 steps on the continuum of force. The first step in the continuum of force is presence, right? Simply having a police officer, security mechanism present and visible, that will actually deter a hell of a lot of crime. The second layer on the continuum of force is simply verbally stating that you see something is happening. Hey you, what are you doing? Right, there's not a whole lot of criminals out there when a police officer says, hey you, what are you doing, that are going to stick around. They don't want the other two layers of the force continuum to come into effect. And so one of the things to be thinking about is if somebody comes into an environment, the lights come on, they see a surveillance camera, and then the surveillance camera simply automatically plays a WAV file. Hey you, what are you doing here? Right, again, psychologically, remember that hacker, that criminal, doesn't really understand the environment, most likely, right? They don't really understand what's going on. They don't understand how everything works. So they have to make a split-second decision about do they continue forward? Is it worth it to continue forward, or will they leave? If they leave right now, the worst that they're going to get is a trespassing charge. If they continue, the worst they're going to get is whatever the hell they were planning to do, right? And so by playing something like a WAV file, it's just an automatic way to try to deter people to say, hey, we see you. And then one of the other things you can have is notify employees and use 2-way communication to say hi. This became big when I was finishing up my business and we were doing surveillance systems. Is basically you can have these cameras, they can trigger, they can notify somebody that somebody's in an area, possibly past a time when people are supposed to be there. And especially with smartphones nowadays, you can just click up the smartphone and go, hey, yeah. So who are you? This is the CEO of the company, or this is a security officer for the company, and nobody is supposed to be in that area of the building right now. I got lost on the way to the bathroom. right? So these are some of the things to be thinking about with surveillance. And again, with surveillance, when surveillance comes into security, the important thing to understand is the surveillance system is not the security. The surveillance system is a component of the overall system that you're going to be creating. The next thing to talk about is that security is a mindset. Again, right, with all these cybersecurity videos, where the words that I keep coming back to are creating relationships and culture. Now I know the startup world, Silicon Valley, they've been talking about culture for 15 years, so this should be a very easy concept at this point in time. Here's the issue. Everybody likes to say these words, right? They're great buzzwords. Our culture is X, Y, or Z. And then they hire whatever jackass comes in off the street. Again, what's amazing when you hear the issues of sexual harassment, when you hear the issues of racism, when you hear the issues of security problems in so many of these organizations, literally they tout this culture of being inclusive and diverse. And you're like, wait a minute, how can you have a culture that's inclusive and diverse, and yet you have all of these instances of sexual harassment and racism and the whole nine yards? And the reason is because that's just a buzzword. That's just a buzzword. That's what they say to make people feel better. And then at the end of the day, they hire whoever the hell they can afford. And they don't really think about the culture and how it really affects their business. One of the things you need to be thinking about from a security mindset is the culture of the people that you're going to be hiring is going to be very important for cybersecurity and security within your organization, right? You know, again, I came from the military world. I was in Baltimore for a long time. You know, there are military contractors in the whole nine yards. So when you talk about having a building where every area in the building, other than the bathroom, has video surveillance, the people that I'm used to hanging around will be like, well, yeah, that makes sense. I am glad they're willing to invest that much in security. Right? They'll be happy for it, right? Again, I love the Azure Cognitive Services. One of the things with Azure Cognitive Services is it can do speech recognition, turn the speech into text, and then you can parse that text however you want. So you could actually have like little microphones throughout your facility, constantly recording what's going on, looking for little trigger words, right? If somebody says the N-word, you know, put on some sirens or whatever else. Again, I'm used to that kind of world. What? You mean you can have microphones everywhere recording everything everybody says and in real time be able to trigger events? That sounds awesome! Right, again, when you think about having locks on doors, when you think about changing your passwords every so often, right? If you come from an environment where security is very important, right? If the people that you hire, their culture is to believe that security is a priority, then cybersecurity within your environment is probably not going to be too difficult, right? If you come from this kind of environment, the idea that when somebody walks into your area and you do not know who they are, that you immediately stand up, say, hi, how can I help you? Right, again, that's a deterrence. I recognize you, right? First form of a force. And then actually interacting with them verbally, that's a second layer of force, right? If the culture of your people is such that when they see something off, when they see something odd, so on and so forth, that they immediately recognize that there may be an issue and they immediately respond. Maybe they say, hey, how can I help you? Maybe they call their superiors. Maybe they call the police, right? That is going to give you one security environment. On the other hand, you know, you hire a lot of people that are in the tech industry today. They don't necessarily like authority. Here's the thing, here's an interesting question in the modern world. What happens if something really bad happens on your premises, but your people are so anti-authoritarian that they refuse to call the police? Like, think about this from a cultural standpoint. Real world, last year with the whole BLM riots and a lot of those things, and again, not going to get into the middle of that, but what I thought was very interesting is there was a person, they literally had a gun pulled on them and their car was stolen from them. So two people came into their driveway, they pulled a gun, put the gun to the person's face, the person handed over the keys, let them walk away, and then literally did not call the police. Because in their mind, again, not getting into the middle of this, but in their mind, they were worried about the safety of the people that had just put a gun in their face. That is not how I would respond. That's not my culture. But anyways, right? That's a big issue there. What happens if you have somebody that comes into your environment, but everybody's so mouse. I don't want to make that person feel uncomfortable. I don't want the hacker to feel uncomfortable in our environment. You're gonna have some issues there. Again, anti-authoritarian, right? With everything from passwords to everything. Again, a lot of cybersecurity is policies. What is the password policy? What is the access control policy? What is the need to know policy? There's all these policies, right? You have a whole bunch of people saying, screw the man. It becomes very, very difficult to be the man when all your employees hate the man. One of those things to think about. Let's see, process for security issues. Again, this is a big problem when we deal with cybersecurity. We deal with security in the real world. As people put locks up, people put surveillance cameras up, and the whole 9 yards. But nobody ever answers the question: what if there's actually a problem? No, seriously. What happens if somebody walks in with an AR-15? What do we do then? Again, it's a process, right? Who does someone call if there is an issue? So think about this, right? Once again, one of the big things with hackers, with the social engineering. With social engineering, the idea is you pretend to be somebody. Social engineering is you're an actor, right? So you put on the telephone repair person uniform, or you put on the exterminator uniform, or whatever else, and then you walk into a building. Now here's the thing, what if the people in your building have a security mindset, a security culture, so when they see the exterminator coming in, they say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? They say, oh, I'm an exterminator, and I'm doing whatever else. And you sit there, and it's an office building, and you're like, we don't really have like cockroaches or anything. Here's the thing, if one of your employees runs into a situation that they don't feel comfortable with, do they actually have someone to call? Is there a point of contact that they can pick up the phone and say, hey, I just want to make sure, we have somebody that's doing extermination around the server room. Is that supposed to be happening today? Right? Do you have some type of process for that? How does a security problem escalate? Right? Basically, if you have some type of issue, you have somebody on the premises. What are the ways to escalate the problem? Again, like there's this idea that social pressure is going to fix everything, right? If you look at a hacker meanly, they're gonna leave. I'm looking at you mean now, so you better shove the hell off. And again, hey, that works 80% of the time. Stink eye is an amazing form of force, but it doesn't work for everybody, right? What do you have somebody pretending to be an exterminator? They're going through. Basically, somebody comes to them and says, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm an exterminator." They call up their boss or they call up somebody else and they say, "Hey, we have somebody doing extermination around the server room. This seems very odd. What's the process past that? Does the manager come down and then have a conversation with the exterminator? Does the manager feel comfortable telling the exterminator to go the hell away?" Again, when I had my business in my building, we had the first place that I had, we were renting it, and so we had an exterminator come in to exterminate, and I told them to go the hell away. They're like, "Well, we were called by the property manager," and I'm like, "We're a computer shop. I don't give a damn. Get out." Does your manager feel like they have the authority to tell the exterminator to get the hell out? Because the important thing to understand, if that is somebody actually doing social engineering, they're going to stay there as long as possible. Until they're forced out of the building or until they feel like they're forced out of the building, they're just going to keep playing whatever part that they're playing until something happens. So does a manager feel like that they can force them out of the building? Does the manager feel that they can call the police? Look, I've asked you to leave this premises. If the property manager actually wants you to do this, they can communicate with me and schedule this later. If you do not leave, I'm calling the police. "Well, look, man, look, I was paid to exterminate, so I'm sorry, man, I'm just gonna keep exterminating." Fine. Police? Yes, I have a trespasser. Right? Is there a process for escalation? Are employees comfortable confronting other people? Again, this goes back to culture. You can tell people to confront folks all you want. Again, this is one of those weird things. I'm an Aspie. Again, as an Aspie, there's weird things about normal humans I just don't understand. This thing with confronting other people. Yeah, I just do what I do. Anyways, apparently this is very difficult for a lot of folks. Like simply saying, hey, who are you? Are your people comfortable with that? Are employees comfortable calling the police? And again, this is a huge issue right now. Again, when I talk about BLM, I am not getting on either side of this particular argument. I don't care. Again, I care about the process. I care about what this actually means for your environment. But in the modern world, especially in the technology world, there is a lot of antipathy against the police. The police are almost considered more of an enemy than the people pulling out guns and putting them in front of people's faces. So if you have a problem in your facility, will your people actually call the police when it is actually necessary? That's a hell of a thing to think about. How will your systems be tested? So again, with this type of thing, you do not have a system until your system is tested. So when you tell people that they need to be comfortable confronting others, when you tell people all this kind of different stuff, just like, backup tests, just like disaster recovery tests, just like all the other kind of tests that you would perform for your infrastructure, you need to actually test your security processes, right? Go home. Pay your nephew or pay one of your neighbor's kids to put on an exterminator outfit and just send them through the front door of your building. And basically give them a $100 bill. That's one of the things, reward. Lots of carrots when you're dealing with employees. Sometimes you gotta use a stick. When you're dealing with the employees, sometimes they gotta get fired. Most of the time you wanna use carrots. Let me be clear. One of the things that I've learned as an Aspie is carrots make your life a lot easier. So anyways, give that kid with a little, the exterminator uniform, a $100 bill, send him in with one of those little spray bottles, just put water in it so it won't hurt anybody, right? Just have him spray some water around the facility, and the first person that confronts the exterminator and then calls the manager, basically have that kid hand over $100 and say, you passed this particular test. But again, very important. One of the issues, though, again, with security is people feel very mousy. People feel they don't want to confront other people, the whole 9 yards. And so that's going to be a big thing, is testing the system so that people actually get used to responding when there are problems. If you do not test people on this, it's not going to work out well. And then force continuum, as I talked about. Then think about the response plan and then the after the event plan. Basically, after an event, what happens? So after somebody has broken into your building, after somebody has compromised your systems, after whatever the hell has happened, basically have a plan for what to do next. If somebody put a Raspberry Pi with Kali and was running Nmap against our infrastructure and we found this, what happens after the physical intrusion? Okay, the first thing is we're going to have somebody go around and check all of the locks and the access control for the building. Have any locks been jammed or something like that allowed somebody to walk in? The next thing is, okay, this person was able to put this little Raspberry Pi into a port on the wall that was not being used by another computer. Why was that port still active? We are going to audit all computer network ports in the building and basically make sure that any network port that's not actually connected to a computer device, we are going to disconnect that back in the network closet or whatever else. Basically go through and think about what is the plan, what is the response plan, and then what will happen after the particular event. And now we get to operational security. We haven't even gotten operational security yet. So anyways, first thing. Buy ugly. Buy ugly. Ugly is your friend. Now I know you're a fancy, cool computer geek and you want all the flash, you want all the bing, you want all the pomp and circumstance. And here's the thing. Take your ridiculous paycheck and buy the fanciest ass equipment for your house, right? In your house, have a Mac Pro. In your house, have the big ass OLED TV. Anyways, in your house, have the fancy car and the whole 9 yards. One of the things to be thinking about for a business environment, again, actually talk with a CEO, make sure this is okay first. But I would argue in most business environments, you're better off buying ugly. Right, remember those old those crap tan Dell computers and Gateway computers we used to have? Those things were awesome because they were so ugly. You walk in, you don't want to steal one of those things. An important thing to be thinking about from the cybersecurity realm is a lot of times the security intrusions for your building are actually going to just be low-level crime. Somebody's going to break in and they're going to steal your computers. You're going to steal your laptops, your servers, whatever else. And so here's the thing, right? Crackheads don't do spec checks. Right? You know, they're not going to go in and run Bellark Advisor on the computer. Be like, okay, well, we got 50 computers here, but we can only take 10. Okay, so what I want everybody to do is you're all going to run Bellark Advisor. We're going to print out the results. Then we're going to see which of these 10 computers are spec'd out the best. And then those are the ones that we're going to steal. That's not how crackheads do it. How crackheads do it, one, whatever is actually accessible. If they can grab it, they will take it. And then two, they will grab the fanciest ass thing they see. So if your Active Directory server for some reason has flashy little LED lights and colored fans and all that kind of crap, and I know some of you people out there have that, guess what's going to happen to your Active Directory server? Right? And so one of the things to be thinking about is when you buy your equipment for your facility, the uglier it is, the more blah it is, the least likely it is that people are actually going to try to steal it, right? The other thing to be thinking about when you buy ugly is, depending on how much infrastructure your particular company has, doing things such as buying rack-mounted equipment, that is actually a security precaution, right? So if I have a server, a desk form factor server, then a crackhead walks in and goes, "Ooh, computer!" and steals your Active Directory server, walks out with your Active Directory server. Here's the thing, if that's a rack-mounted server, they go in, they see a whole bunch of flashing LEDs on their rack-mounted server, and again, they don't really know what the hell it is. They don't know it's like a 4 Xeon, 128 gig RAM, whatever else thing that's actually worth like $20,000. They just go, I don't know what the hell that is, and so then they go try to steal the thing that they do know what the hell it is. So this is something to consider. I think about this, back with the old server. Oh my golly, the old Dell servers. There's about a generation of servers, I don't know, between 2003 to 2010 that Dell produced. They would have the triple redundant power supplies. They were just made out of steel. They were awesome from a security standpoint. They were so heavy. They were so heavy. You'd be sitting there, they had no storage. They had 100 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM. I have no idea why the hell they're so heavy. They were just rocks though. One of the valuable parts with that is if somebody comes in to steal your computers and you've got this big metal brick, it is going to be more difficult to steal. So some things to be considered. And again, do you upgrade everything to the latest and greatest when you think about monitors? And again, you have to think about your environment here, right? So if you're in San Francisco and you got to prove to the world how amazeballs you are, then again, having the latest and greatest in monitors and latest and greatest and all that kinds of stuff, that probably makes sense. Again, remember from a business standpoint, the CEO has a lot of different things that they have to be thinking about. They need to be thinking about security. They need to be thinking about employee happiness. They need to be thinking about how to get investors. They need to be thinking about how to prove to customers that they're worthwhile. And so, from the CEO's perspective, sometimes having flash makes a lot of sense, right? Again, I talk about this with CPG Nuggets just because they were pretty flash. Or back in the day, they had every person had their own iMac with a second screen. They had the standing desk, those weird little ball things to stand on the standing desk. They had a knife throwing room. It was ridiculous. From a technical standpoint, it made not a damn bit of sense. But if you think about it, right, that was, hey, look, we are a technology education provider. We are doing very well. We are growing. We have the money for things like knife throwing rooms. It seems like a very bad security policy, right? But that was actually something very useful to the CEO. Something to be considering, though. Again, if you are running a company in the middle of Baltimore City, if you have all of this flash equipment, it's really easy for that flash equipment to walk the hell out the door, right? Somebody walks in and you've got all, equipment that's less than a year old, all of that gets packed into a van and they leave and all your crap is gone. Something to be thinking about is, maybe it's okay to have 15-year-old monitors. One, the 15-year-old monitor probably isn't going to cost you anything. And two, if somebody breaks into your facility, they're probably not going to steal the 15-year-old monitor, right? You got some big block of an LCD monitor, like who the hell wants that kind of thing? So this is some of the stuff that you have to be thinking about. Then we go on employees. Again, I talked about the employee security policy before. One of the things you need to think about from an operational security standpoint is think about doing employee background checks. Again, employees are the #1 threat to a company. Now, I know a lot of people are going to hate me at this point. Oh my God, you keep talking about employees. Yeah. Yes, all of your bosses are talking about you this way. They just won't say it to your face. The reality is in any company, employees are your #1 threat. Whether they're clandestine Zimbabwean hackers that infiltrated your HR department, or they're just normal jackasses that are going to steal whatever isn't nailed down and try to sell it to a pawn shop. The reality is your employees are the ones that are most likely going to cause the damage. One of the things to be thinking about is what is the security component of your vetting process? When you go out there to vet a new coder, when you go out there to vet any of your employees, what is the security component of that? Again, looking at things like what is their credit score? Are they massively in debt? Again, we get in a lot of weird moral, ethical stuff. I am not here to get into that crap. I'm just here to put stuff on the table and let you figure out how you want to deal with it. But if you have somebody that is massively in debt, the amount of money that you're paying them does not pay for whatever their monthly bills are, well, they're going to have to figure out how to make up that difference somehow. Equipment walking out the door is a hell of a way for that kind of thing to happen. Again, thinking about this from a security perspective is making sure that they do their documentation properly, making sure that they follow decent security procedures, the whole 9 yards. One of the things you may really want to think about, again, especially with any kind of important employees, is they have their recommendations, they have their people that say that they approve of them or whatever, actually to call those people and ask pointed questions about specific things. Not just whether they showed up on time, but ask, what about this, that, or the other thing? How comfortable are you from a security standpoint with the employee that you're going to be hiring? Thinking about the approval process. Approval process is a big thing, especially with infrastructure. Again, I was there for the Wild West days. I remember the Wild West. Wild West was awesome. You were given a credit card and you were told to build. That's great. Built some horrible crap. Built some horrible crap. But I did my job. I was given a credit card and I built. All right. One of the things you need to be thinking about in the modern world, though, is what is going to be the approval process for modifications, changes, upgrades, the type of thing to your infrastructure. Remember, every server that goes into your infrastructure is a new vulnerability, is a new possible vector for attack. Anytime somebody tweaks with your infrastructure, that is another place where you may get attacked, or you may have downtime, or you may have any other kind of problems. One of the things you need to be thinking about is what is the approval process. If somebody actually wants to spin up a new server within your facility, what is the process to allow that to happen? And again, this is where we get to the big issue in cybersecurity and in IT in general, where this is boring as hell. This is boring as hell, right? People want to install operating systems, and they want to spin up services, and they want to do all that kind of stuff. But there's paperwork involved. Okay, if we are going to be doing this server, who is actually going to be affected by this particular server? Okay, why are we going to pick the vendor, this particular physical vendor, Dell, Lenovo, whatever else? Why are we picking this particular operating system? What is the total cost of ownership going to be? Do we have the institutional knowledge to be able to support this system when the person that is installing the system, quits for another job in 2 weeks because they got poached by another Silicon Valley company, right? Thinking about all of that kind of stuff is a very big deal. One of the big problems we have in a lot of the modern corporate world is that they're just zombie servers out there. Right? Have you ever gone into a server room and wondered what half the servers literally do? Again, I've gone into server rooms. And I'm like, okay, this is the Active Directory server, this is the Exchange server, this is the antivirus server. And I had like 4 other servers. I had 4 other servers. And I'm like, what did they do? I don't know. Like, what do you mean you don't know? They literally didn't know. They just had 4 servers running. How you get that is by not having a good process. Again, one of the big issues that you can have, remember, technology skill sets. More and more people have the technology skill set. We are not in 1995 anymore. Again, I keep bringing up the dot-com boom, and a lot of people get pissed for some reason because I bring up the dot-com boom. But that was a different time period. That was a different time period. Not all the kids knew how to spin up servers back in the day. Again, when I got my MCSE, you have to understand, when I got my MCSE, literally an entire test was TCP/IP. Like, learning the primary and secondary DNS configuration was considered a valuable skill set back 20 years ago. That's not the world we live in today. You can literally have somebody in the marketing department decide that they're going to spin up their own server to provide some services to the marketing department, and all of a sudden that's a massive vulnerability that you may not even know that exists, especially if you're not auditing your systems properly. And so you need to have an approval process so things can get approved. At the very least, even if you lose the argument on whether you get the system or not, at least you know the damn system exists, right? How are employees given greater system rights? Again, when you think about this from security policies within Active Directory or whatever, a big question is, what is the approval process to give people access? Again, whether it's permissions to folders, whether it's other types of security permissions, what is the actual process there? Can somebody just call the help desk and say, hey, I need permission to get into X, Y, or Z? Is there kind of anything like that? And how are the current rights being audited? So everything from physical access control systems to Active Directory, file permissions, all of that kind of thing. Are you actually auditing what people currently have, right? What happens if somebody jumps in jobs? What happens if somebody was in HR and then they move over to IT or something else? Do they still have permissions to see what everybody gets paid? Again, that can be a big thing. In the modern world of activist employees that feel like attacking their employers is a great thing to do, if somebody has the rights on the network to see what all the employees in the company get paid, if you don't do something about that, the wrong person gets that might get leaked to everybody in the company. And then that's a security problem. Important thing to be thinking about is security and all this. Again, it's not just about the Zimbabwean hackers. It's about tornadoes. It's about hurricanes. It's about activist employees broadcasting what everybody gets paid in the company. You need to be thinking about all these types of things. Now, need to know is a big thing. Again, with operational security, here's the deal. If people do not know where to attack, it makes it a hell of a lot harder to attack your infrastructure. Knowing the target is half the battle. If they know your company uses Azure, then they know to attack Azure. If they know you use AWS, they know to attack AWS. If they know where your server room is, your data center is, they know how to try to attack your server room or their data center. If they don't know any of this horse crap, it makes it very difficult to be able to attack your systems. Do the help desk employees need to know the back end is on Azure? Again, one of the big things in the technology world, people like to talk. Again, the technology world was really interesting. And one of the big problems we have in the modern world goes back, 40, 50 years, right? So a lot of the technology that we use today, goes back to ARPANET and that type of thing. And that was developed by DARPA, which is the component of the Department of Defense, and it was focused on basically creating better communication systems for the military. And so, as the way the U.S. does many things in life, basically you had this military-type technology, and then the first people that the military-type technology got released to was the colleges. So you literally had the military handing over all of this technology to the hipsters, or hippies, I suppose, in the colleges, and all kinds of insanity ensued. And so one of the big issues that we deal with in the modern world is that there's this idea for completely open transfer of information. Everybody should know everything. Have you heard that? Transparency? Transparency's gonna save the world. I can tell you as an Aspie, that is a lie. Transparency is a stupid idea. I've learned that from the real world experience. One of the issues, though, with that idea, with that whole kind of college academic thing, you have a lot of folks out there that basically want to share all of the information. All the technology people in the company should know how our infrastructure works, should know who we use for our servers, should know who we use for communication or whatever else. The problem there is, if everybody knows, then that's information that they all know. Any one of those employees, could actually be an attacker against your system. Plus, they may be going out and they may be telling somebody else over a beer about your internal infrastructure. Again, one of the things to be thinking about, right? If we're in a war, we're in a war, Eli. Well, again, I think about intelligence operations, like real world intelligence operations. And so a lot of people in the tech world, they think everything's like virtual, right? As long as you encrypt, right? If you will use end-to-end encryption, then you're safe. Here's the thing, if you're doing real-world intelligence operations, one of the things is just to befriend and buy beers for people that work at a company. All right, so if I want to attack a company, if I want to attack SolarWinds, if I want to attack SpiceWorks or whatever else, and again, I'm a real attacker, not some jackass, sitting in their mama's basement or something. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to have a beer budget so that I can go to all the meetups in the local area, I can go to all the events or whatever, and anytime I run into anybody that works for one of these particular companies, I am going to be the nicest person that they have ever met in their life. You want a beer? Let me buy you a beer. And then I'm buying them all the beer they want. And then I'm going to pump them for all the information they give me. The juicy information they'll give me. And what's really cool, especially with like help desk people, help desk people want to be important. Right? Help desk people, they feel like they should be just as important as senior level admins. So if you have somebody buying them beer after beer, telling them they're special, telling them how pretty their skills are, telling them how, I wish I could be in your shoes right now. You're just amazing. That help desk employee will spill every damn bean they have to spill. So how many beans do you want to give them? I want to give them none. I want them to know what help desk system we use. And when they spill that, I'll be like, yeah, that's all I got. Anyways, again, something to think about. Like, I keep talking about this whole cyber war thing, because, again, this is becoming a bigger issue. Again, whether it's Russia, whether it's China, whatever else. Hey, Russians, if there are any Russians watching this video, I do not have a problem with Russia. I don't have a problem with Russia. I can understand why Germany would have a problem with Russia. I can understand why Syrians would have a problem with Russia. I can understand why Ukrainians would have a problem with Russia. I'm neither of those. I'm an American. I don't have any problems with y'all, right? Again, China, same deal. I understand why Taiwan would have an issue with China. There's a joke in there. Anyways, but there's this idea that we're in this cyber war. And here's what I really want you to think about, right? Again, if you actually learn the vocation of violence, if you actually learn the vocation that goes with all this kind of stuff, if you actually believe this is what's happening, then it's time to stop playing around like you're a gosh darn 9-year-old. It's not about little kids running around with their super soakers, screaming one person's a communist and one person's an Iranian or whatever. Right? It's time to really start thinking about your infrastructure, really start thinking about how your entire organization looks from a security perspective, and then start battening down the hatches. I think we're in a kerfuffle. To be clear, I think we are in a global cyber kerfuffle, which is a world different than a cyber war. But if you think this is a cyber war, you need to start thinking about this kind of crap. Again, one of the things I push with any kind of technology company out there, what counterintelligence assets do you have? And most of the people I talk to don't even know what the hell that means. It's very sad. The next thing you need to be thinking about from a operational security standpoint, again, is social media. LinkedIn. It auto-corrected that. Anyways, LinkedIn is an amazeballs intelligence resource. CTO of dumbass company. Again, right? We're in a war. The Zimbabweans are coming for our storage arrays. Why? And again, one of the important things I want you to think about here, and I keep pointing out CTOs, right? Because if a help desk person puts their crap onto LinkedIn, Again, from a security standpoint, I don't know how smart that is. If your senior level admin puts her crap onto LinkedIn, again, that is not good security. But I don't know. If you've ever dealt with senior level admins, you know there's only so many arguments you want to have with them. But when your CTO and your CIO is broadcasting to the world that is their position with your company, does that make a damn bit of sense? Again, if you think about real intelligence operation, not the bullshit you see on the crappy movies or whatever, right? If I know who your CTO or CIO is, I can figure out what the physical address of your CTO or CIO is. And most likely I can go to their address, I can tap into their networking communication, and I can mine every bit of network traffic that comes into or out of their house. Their house. What is your security plan for the residents of your CTO? Probably got none, right? So stop broadcasting to your damn CTO. It's stupid. Again, it's stupid. And again, one of the things to be thinking about is what are your IT people posting to GitHub? GitHub is the new sexy thing. Everybody wants to post on a GitHub. It proves that they're real people. And again, we have this hyper sharing environment where everybody wants to share. I'm going to develop something. I'm going to share it to everybody. One of the things I want to understand, though, is if people, if they're broadcasting what company they work for, and then they start sharing to GitHub the project that they're working on, this shows how your infrastructure works. Again, if they come up with, Python scripts that interact with Azure or whatever services, basically that means your infrastructure is using Python and Azure. I know points to attack. Not only that, when you think about what actually gets published to GitHub, are you verified that they don't do something stupid? How easy is it to forget something like API keys in the code that you're posting to GitHub? Right? Endpoint, IP addresses. Again, it's supposed to get cleansed. You're supposed to not do it. What's the chance people are posting all that kind of crap, right? You really have to think about it. Again, operational security, one of the big things to be thinking about with the actual physical premises is marking doors and weird office layouts. One of the big things, if somebody is coming into your environment to physically compromise it, it makes it a hell of a lot easier if you've got a map on the wall. Oh, okay, yes, the server room is right here. Do you need any help? Nope, I'm going this way. Right? The more complicated, the more stupid you make the layout, the more difficult it's going to be for people that are trying to compromise your infrastructure, your area. Everywhere from normal criminals to cyber criminals. Along with need to know, does a secretary need to know where the server room is? So this is a big problem. I've talked about this before, back when I was doing the telephone system administration classes way back in the day. We dealt with digital telephone systems, Avaya, Definity, PBXs. Anyways, there were these boxes you put on the wall. They had cards that went into them. So different cards did different things. One of them was basically a voicemail card, something called an Audix card. They're digital telephone lines, analog telephone lines, all kinds of cool stuff that went on these cards. The thing is, those cards cost about 30 grand a piece. They were like these really big cards, and they cost about 30 grand a piece. So one of the security problems they're having at the time, is that some crackheads out there realized how valuable these cards were. There was like no tracking of these cards. Again, we didn't have the internet the way we have internet today. And so what they would do is they would walk in, they would see a secretary, they'd be in their little telephone person's uniform. They'd walk in, they see the secretary, they say, "Hi, yeah, we're with a telephone repair company, and yeah, we understand you have a problem with your telephone system, so we're just here to fix your problem." And the secretary's like, "Oh, thank golly, I didn't even know that there was a problem. I'm so happy you were so timely to come." And so then they would guide the telephone repair people to the telephone room. The telephone repair people would tell the secretary, "Hey, we should just be a few minutes, everything should be working fine." Then the secretary leaves, they close the door, they open up the definitive PBX, they just start pulling cards. They start yanking those cards out, putting those cards in their bag. They then walk out, and you see the secretary, "Oh, yeah, we ran into an issue. We do need a couple of components. I'm going to go out in the van and see if we have them, and if not, we'll run back to our shop. It won't be any more than about 20 minutes. "Oh, okay. I'm so happy you're doing such a wonderful job for us. I know. We try to serve. We try to please our customers." And then they walk out the door with about 120 grand worth of cards. They get in the van and they drive the hell off. The thing with this is very interesting. Again, think about telephone systems in a real business environment. People are not on the telephone constantly. And when there's telephone quirks, people don't overly think about it. And so, when those cards get pulled out, telephone system starts failing, people don't think about it too much. And so it's not until 20 or 30, 20, 30, and 60 minutes later until somebody says, hey, there's a problem with the telephone system. And the secretary's like, yeah, we had the repair people come. And then the boss is like, what repair people? We didn't have a problem. And then they go in and they see that their PPX was ransacked. Now here's the thing. Here is the amazing thing. If the secretary didn't know where the telephone system room was, that whole line of attack fails out. Hi, we're here to fix the telephone system. Oh, okay, let me call the boss, because I don't even know where the telephone system is. Hey, boss, we don't have a problem with the telephone system. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, we don't have a problem with the telephone system. Maybe you have the wrong address. Right? The more people understand, again, if what was it? Oh, there's that one guy who did RSS or what? Aaron Schwartz. Aaron Schwartz, poor guy. Capital punishment for basically scraping public information. That was sad. But anyways, Aaron Schwartz, right? If you remember Aaron Schwartz, he helped create RSS, he helped create Reddit, he did a lot of amazing things. He found a networking closet at the college he was at, Harvard, something like that, Princeton. Anyways, went in the networking closet, plugged in his little laptop to basically scrape what was supposed to be like it was like the information was free, but in order to access the free information, you had to pay money, whatever. Basically, he went in there, he plugged in his laptop, scraped the hell out of this database system, and, he got the death penalty. He didn't get the death penalty. The government was going after him for 30 years for this crime, this horrible crime. And then he decided he'd rather eat a bullet than do it. But the important thing to be thinking about this, again, from a security standpoint, is why the hell did Aaron Schwartz know where the hell the networking closet is? Right? If Aaron Schwartz did not know where the networking closet is, a whole bunch of tragedy could have been averted. Is your office so intuitive, even a hacker won't get lost? Again, there's a lot of this idea with intuitive design, right? People should just be able to flow from one area to the next in your office space. They should just know where to go. Well, if you create intuitive design, that means somebody straight off the street can walk into your building and know where to go. That might not be the greatest idea for your company. And then the whole question, if somebody is walking around lost, if you have a non-intuitive design, somebody is walking around lost, and somebody says, hey, can I help you? That is then a form of deterrent. Again, when I talk about putting signs on doors, again, if I had a server room, it would have a restroom sign on it with an out of order. Man, it's too bad. The facilities people, that restroom has been out of order for like the last decade. It's really sad. I don't know, the computer guys keep going in there every once in a while. I don't know what the hell they're up to. Well, we all know. Maybe it's a furry sex or something. Oh, let's see. Then we go to selecting office space. Something to be thinking about. Again, when you actually start doing physical security is the doors, the lights, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of that you're going to be doing to the premises that you rent or the premises that you buy. So one of the things you need to be thinking about, especially if you're a startup company or if you're a new business, is think about selecting an office space and thinking about selecting an office space that actually fits in with your security profile. Again, what is the crime rate in your area, the overall crime rate? Again, I came from Baltimore City. The overall crime rate was horrible. Horrible. All right? Something to think about. Like if you can rent an office, again, like think about this with Baltimore. So Baltimore is a prime example. Again, 300 people are murdered every single year in Baltimore. The weird part of Baltimore is some places are hell on earth, and you go like 2 miles to the left, and it's beautiful. Right? Again, I talk about this with Columbia, right? So you go to Baltimore City, they are every single day, they're sending another guy through the chipper shredder. You go a couple miles to the west, you go to a place called Columbia, and then you go to Whole Foods, and you have the whole colors of the rainbow, you have hijabs and all kinds of people wandering around, buying their stuff at Whole Foods. It's like an entirely different world. Not that far apart. So one of the things to be thinking about with things like crime rates is you're like, okay, well, I can get an office space here, which has a very high crime rate. I can go a mile away. Again, you have to understand this about urban environments. You go 1 mile, you go less than a mile, you go half a mile. It's an entirely different world. And so from a security standpoint, do you want to be within the zip code that has an incredibly high crime rate, or would you like to be in the zip code that has a lot less crime rate? Again, that's just an operational thing. What place are you going to rent? Thinking about the layers of security for your premises. This is something, again, important coming from the Baltimore area, right? If you have a retail storefront in the Baltimore area, then basically there's no barrier between a criminal and your facility. Right? So if you have like a retail storefront, something like that, somebody breaks in the door, somebody breaks through the window, whatever else, and they are in your premises. Well, if you go to an office building, right? If you go to an office building, then not only do they have to get into the office building, but then they have to get up to your office. They have to decide they actually want to go after you so much. Like there's 100 other tenants. So out of the 100 other tenants, they're going to go specifically go after you. So they have to go up and they have to figure out they're going to go after you, right? That's another layer of security. If you're in an area that has their own private security, again, I used to work as a security guard. If you're in an area that has their own private security officers, that has their own access control system into the building itself, and then you have your own access control system, blase, 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 right? These are all layers of security, and this is something that you should be considering when you get your space. That's one of the things like with Silicon Dojo. Again, the real world with Silicon Dojo, even though it's kind of gone sideways as far as COVID is concerned right now. I was looking at retail spaces here in the Asheville area, and one of the reasons I decided to go with an office space in the Asheville area is because there are those additional layers of security. Being in an office space, there are multiple doors that people have to get through in order to get through this office space. Then they have to go through a lot of hoops just to be able to break in and the whole 9 yards, and having computers and having kind of slightly valuable types of equipment. I thought that was a hell of a lot better than having like a retail space where somebody could go, ooh, I want that computer, smash the window and get it. Do you have a server room? Again, when you think about layers of security within the building, if somebody gets into your office space, you know, your networking equipment, your server equipment, and all that kind of stuff, is that locked in its own HVAC, you know, little environment? Does that have a lock on it? Ability to modify the space. Something to be thinking about with your office space. Again, this is where we come into facilities, this is where we come into permitting, this is where we come into laws and regulations and stuff a lot of technology people don't want to think about, is if you come into a space and you decide to build out a server room or something like that, how easy is it to do, right? A lot of people, they'll run a space, they'll run a 5,000 square foot space, they'll be like, this is amazing, okay, we're going to put a server room over here, and for some reason they find out that they're not allowed to put a server room over there. All right, it's not, right? You know what you need to do, you technically can do it, but because of regulations or whatever else, you're not able to do it. ISP connectivity, again, a big thing to be thinking about in the modern world. When you're thinking about cybersecurity, again, you need to be thinking about reliability, resiliency, not just about whether, you know, the Zimbabwean hackers come after you, but what happens if somebody puts a backhoe through your T1 line or whatever else. Important thing to be thinking about is what is your ISP connectivity. Again, if we talk about disaster recovery scenarios, what happens if somebody puts a backhoe through your T1 line and then that night a tornado comes through and picks up your server room? Right? If you had redundant ISP connections, your first ISP connection fails, all of your replication and synchronization and backups and all that kind of stuff simply fail over to the secondary one, and you're pretty much A-OK. If you only have one ISP connection, something goes through it, and then after that there is a massive catastrophic event at your facility, then, you know, you may lose a whole bunch of data and that type of thing. And then the property management quality. And how forward-thinking are the property management? One of the big problems, again, when you go out to rent a space, is a lot of people look at spaces, when they look at where it is, this is in a fancy area, they look at the building as it is, this is a nice building, they look at the price, we love the price point, and so they move in. One of the things they don't think about is like property management and what the property management allows and will pay for. I had a big problem with this with one of my clients, again, back in the Baltimore area, is they had an office space in an industrial park, a light industrial park, like a real light industrial park, relatively modern light industrial park. And the problem was they were paying, again, this was 10 plus years ago, they were paying $400 a month for a 1.544 T1 connection to their premises. And I was like, why, right? DSL, for Christ's sakes, DSL would have been better than this T1 line. The problem was the property manager and the owner for that industrial park did not want to upgrade the wiring for the industrial park. And so, everybody in the industrial park, if they wanted any kind of adequate internet connection, they had to go with a T1 for $400 a month. Again, thinking about this with the office space that I have, like at my house is less than a mile away from where this office is, quite literally. I have a gigabit per second connection to my house. And here, in this particular building, you can only get a DSL connection. Again, the reason is because the property managers for the building, they don't want to pay for the upgrades, and that causes all kinds of problems. So these are the kinds of things to be thinking about before you even rent your space. If you rent a space with all these problems, then it's going to be much more difficult to secure your space versus if you think about this beforehand. Again, things like crime rate. The crackheads are going to be much more of a problem than the Zimbabwean hackers. Darn those Zimbabwean hackers. Okay, so let's get to physical security. Wow. You know, every time I'm like, hey, I think this class is finally gonna be a reasonable length of time. It still gets long. What can I say? I like to talk. I do. I like to talk. It's important. All these lessons that I'm trying to give you, these are lessons from 20 plus years in the field. They actually are important. Access control. So basically when we talk about access control in the physical security world, so access control, many times you think about it, again, domain control or security policies within your infrastructure. Access control in the physical security world is literally locks on doors, right? The cool thing with access control nowadays is locks on doors are a cool and sexy and modern tool, so you can have a lot of cool stuff with your access control. Access control is absolutely fascinating. Again, like when you have like biometric locks nowadays, or biometric access control, you can have swipe card access control. You can actually have all this kind of stuff tie into Active Directory. There's databases on the back end. There's all kinds of cool stuff when you get access control. But a general overview, one of the big things to be thinking about is locks keep good people from being stupid. Here's the thing. Again, when I talk about employees, when I talk about people, I like people. I want you to understand. I like people. I think people generally, by and large, are good. I enjoy being around people. I enjoy learning about their lived experience. People are I just find them to be fabulous. Employees aren't people. I don't know what happens. You take a good employee, you take a good person, you turn them into an employee. Something happens in the brain. I don't know what it is. I do not understand. And so one of the things you could be thinking about is how to keep your good people from being stupid employees. And one of the things is access control is a good way to do it. Again, if you lock things up. If the server room is locked up, then you can't have interns walking through your server room deciding that they're going to add things to your infrastructure, right? If high value equipment is put into a cage or put into a locked cabinet, it keeps people from thinking about wandering away with it. Again, one of the big things you have to be thinking about, like with criminal justice and all this kind of stuff, is a lot of people have this idea, like there are good people and there are bad people. And again, I find this very weird. Again, having been in the military, having thought my life was going to go in a certain direction, one of the things that I find very weird is just how many people in the modern world don't grasp what they might be capable of. Again, right? I learned how to shoot guns. I learned how to, set off claymores and grenades. I spent a lot of time in martial arts just learning how to break a human body down. Not saying that I do it. Not saying I go out there and try to get into bar fights or anything like that. But again, if you're going to be a soldier, if you're going to be a security officer, if you're going to be a police officer, you're going to do a lot of the weird crap that I've done in my life. The reality is that violence is a vocation. Right? It's a skill. It's a skill set, just like breaking apart a computer or anything else. But again, like what's weird in this modern world, whenever I talk about these kind of things, a lot of folks are horrified. Now, to be clear, I was trained by the government. Most of my training came from the government. Most of this stuff is completely the fuck above board. But when I talk about, oh my God, you would kill somebody. Yeah. I'm confused. I'm sorry, is that a question? Yeah, double tap center mass. My drill sergeants did a good job. What makes the grass grow? Blah, 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 drill sergeant. What makes the grass green? Guts, 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 drill sergeant. I still remember how to use a bayonet. What is it like with the bayonet drills? Oh my God, they drilled you that. It's what you stab. What is it? You stab. You butt stroke. Wait, no, you come up. You bring back. You slam it into their head, and then you slice. I can't remember the last time I actually touched a bayonet. Man, they freaking beat that crap into my head. Anyway, without going off into bizarre land, the point that I'm trying to make here is that most people can do stuff. Like people have this idea that there is good and that there is evil and that there's not really any gray area. The reality, again, is as people say, oh, you would kill somebody. Yes, I would. If I was in a situation where my life or the people that were under my protection, they were in danger, I sure as fuck would double tap center mass, and I sure as hell would butt stroke until their skull caved in. Again, a particular situation, I would act in that event, right? As long as we're not in that particular situation, I'm quite a lovely human being. One of the things you need to be thinking about with access control systems, though, again, especially in the modern world, people have problems with their bills. Again, I'm doing this particular video, and it's not post-COVID. We are not in the post-COVID world when I do this video. We are fully in the COVID world, right? So literally something to be thinking about is as I do this video, the eviction moratorium has disappeared. So there was a whole eviction moratorium in the US, again, whether you like it or dislike it, not getting into it, but basically people who were not able to pay their rent, or not willing to pay their rent, were not able to be evicted. That has been terminated. A lot of the unemployment insurance and a lot of the additional funding and everything that was going out to people that were affected by COVID, all of that kind of stuff is stopped. You have a lot of people in this world right now that are literally not sure how they're going to pay the rent. They're not sure how they're going to pay medical bills. They're not sure how they're going to do a lot of things. So here's the thing. Let's take the good and evil out of this. Let's stop being stupid. Let's stop pretending like we're 9-year-olds and actually deal with real human beings, right? If you have physical equipment, you have a stack of laptops sitting in one of your offices. Each one of those laptops was purchased for about $1,000. On the open market can probably go for $300 or $400. You have one of your installers, you have one of your secretaries, you have somebody that is trying to figure out how to pay the rent, and you've got a stack of laptops there. How easy is it for a couple of those laptops to disappear if you don't have access control? If those laptops or that equipment is behind a locked door, if it is in a locked cabinet, if it is in a locked cage, if it has surveillance so everybody knows that if they steal it, they're going to be noticed in the whole 9 yards, that keeps good people from doing stupid crap. And I think that's like one of the big issues that I have with a lot of the kids nowadays is the naivety, right? The idea that because they have not been put into a hard situation, that they think that people that are put into hard situations won't interact in certain ways. And so this is something that you need to be thinking about, like with these access control systems and the rest of it, is how can you keep your good people from being stupid employees? One of the things to think about too with access control, what would happen in a workplace violence scenario? Again, as I've talked about before, a lot of this is multidisciplinary. When we talk about cybersecurity, we're talking about security. We're talking about security. The access control system that is going to keep somebody from getting into your server room can also be used if somebody walked in with an AR-15 and decides to shoot the hell out of your office space. Right? If somebody walks into your, again, if you have an intuitive office environment where somebody can walk in and they know exactly where the most targets will be, and they're able to walk into that area with the most targets, and then they start double tapping the crap out of people, right? And that's a problem. So something to be thinking about the access control system. Again, with swiping cards or biometrics or anything like that, if every department is sectioned off, so the IT department, they have a lock on their door. The human resources department, they have a lock on their door. The legal department has a lock on their door, right? Even if somebody does have a key card, they only have access to one particular department. Still can end bad, still can end very badly, but at least it won't end even worse. Record access events. Something to be thinking about with the access control systems. The access control systems, again, for a long time now, if you buy a good quality one, you know, with the card swipers, the biometrics, or whatever else, there's actually a database back end on that. Whatever the database is, it can record a whole bunch of stuff. So one of the things is to record access events or failure to access events, right? If you have somebody that keeps swiping their card on the server room, then your cybersecurity person should probably go, hey, I see that you keep swiping your card in the server room, and you're a cook. You're a cook. Why is the cook trying to get into the server room all the time? Again, one of the big things with cybersecurity, you know, if you do not have a log, it didn't happen. Right? The whole idea of if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's here to hear it, did it make a sound? Well, here's the thing: if there is an attack on your system and there is no log to be able to go back and see what happened, how do you actually track that thing happened? So record access events. You can do things like trigger cameras based off of access events. This is kind of cool. This is out for 10 plus years now. So a lot of the access control systems, when you use your key card or whatever else, you can actually have a camera and you can actually trigger. So when somebody swipes their card, they either get access or don't get access, and a picture is taken of them. This can be valuable from a security standpoint because if somebody is swiping a card, a picture is taken of them, and then that picture does not match who that card is supposed to be for, then again, something like a lost card, a stolen card. Have a centrally controllable system. Difficult systems to use breed complacency. Again, when I talk about these access control systems with the database backend, so how these access control systems work is basically there's like a little access control unit, so that it might be a keypad, maybe you punch in a code, maybe you swipe a card, maybe you do biometrics, a fingerprint or something like that. Basically that then sends that information. There's actually a specific protocol, there's an access control protocol, I forget what it's called, that goes back to the access control essentially server. The access control server then matches that on the database. If you're approved, it then sends a signal to the electronic lock, that magnetic lock, and basically releases that magnetic lock generally so that you can get in. One of the big issues that you have in the real world is that a lot of times those systems, I mean, they're not horribly expensive. They're actually very reasonable. To be clear, they're incredibly reasonably priced. But, you know, some businesses, they don't want to spend that kind of money. And so then you start getting weird access control, like lots of different keys, lots of different locks. So if everything is keyed, right? So the server room has a key, the front door has a key, this room has a key, this room has a key, this room has a key. You got 20 keys for the facility. Well, here's the thing. If you have something like 20 keys for the facility, I can tell you what's going to happen. The lock on your server room is going to get duct taped because people aren't going to know where the key is. Maybe you have 3 people who need a key and you actually only have 1 key. It turns into a mess. So having the access control system, that makes sure everybody stays on board with actually using the access control system that you have. Then one thing to be thinking about with the access control systems, this is going to be an important thing, is do you have fail-safe or do you have fail-secure? So what this means, and this is where, again, regulations, legal stuff, is when you have these electronic access control systems, the idea is that in the event of a disaster, you want people to get the hell out of the building, right? So a lot of the access control systems basically are what are called fail-safe. So if there is a power outage to the building, and for some reason the security system cannot work properly, essentially all the locks go right? And with the idea being that people can get out of the building. That's fail-safe. So even if the system fails, it fails in a safe fashion so that people can get out of the building. One of the issues that you may have is in your particular environment, again, if you have a lot of expensive equipment or whatever else, you may want what is called fail-secure. What fail-secure means is that when the power goes out, when there is a failure of the access control system, that it secures into a locked state. This is something that is beyond just simply a technical thing, a conversation with CEO, but also this is something that you're going to need to be thinking about, like talking to regulatory compliance and your particular zoning and all that kind of thing. So you may have it so that the server room fails secure when the rest of the premises fails safe. That's one of those things. When we start getting into actually securing, our equipment, one of the big things to be thinking about is physically securing the computers themselves, right? So a lot of desktop computers at this point, they have these little locks. You can put little locks on the side panel. I've never actually seen anybody put a lock on a side panel, but that's a pretty good idea. Like, you think about it, like with how many computers are out there nowadays, they actually have internal USB connectors. So they may actually have like an actual A-type USB connector inside or whatever else. If somebody's trying to compromise your facility, they crack open a couple of computers, and inside the computer, they add their own hardware. That could be a bad thing. Putting locks onto that so people cannot actually open up the computers willy-nilly is a very smart idea. And on the same hand, again, basically the front of the computers, right? The front of the computer is open, USB ports are accessible, all that kind of stuff is accessible. That could be a problem with security. So something to be thinking about is physically locking your systems themselves. Along those lines, one of the things to think about is the BIOS or UEFI security. So lock what media the PC will boot off of. So one of the cool hacking things you can do, you can use a live thumb drive. It used to be live optical discs, now they're live thumb drives. Basically what you can do is you can boot off of the thumb drive. You have Ubuntu, Kali, whatever else on the thumb drive. Once you boot off the thumb drive, you essentially mount the internal hard drive to that thumb drive as another drive, and then you're able to try to grab whatever you can off of the internal hard drive. One of the reasons that you can do that is because in BIOS, many times there's a boot order that's set up in UEFI or BIOS where it says, you know, try to boot from the optical. If not from the optical, then to USB. If not from the USB, then boot from the hard drive, right? And so if you go into your BIOS UEFI and you close all of that, you do not allow it to boot off of the USB, that can be a very valuable thing. Again, there are also a lot of attacks out there using USB, plugging in Malduinos, bad USBs, and that type of thing. And so a lot of the UEFI, this is actually just grabbed off of Lenovo, you can go in and you can actually disable the ports that you want to be disabled. Again, think about this in the modern world. A lot of computers nowadays are using Bluetooth keyboards and mice. So if you're using a Bluetooth keyboard or mouse, and you already have a file server and a whole bunch of other things, do your users actually need to access the USB? If they don't need to access the USB, then one of the things you can do is shut off all the USB, and that takes away a vector of attack. You can also disable all kinds of other securities. It's interesting, BIOS and UEFI, a lot of times this is something that is overlooked from a security standpoint. Again, people worry about antivirus, anti-malware, firewalls, all of that kind of thing. A lot of times UEFI, that this base level, is one of those things that just is rather overlooked. The only thing that I will warn you is when you put a password on your UEFI, make sure you remember what the hell the password is. People forgetting their BIOS passwords, that's just a sad day. Along the same lines, as far as USB is concerned, one of the things to be thinking about is USB locks. So basically, there are these locks out there that you can put into your USB, little USB ports. It uses this little key thing, so like with this, use this little key thing, you slot in the little port blocker into the port, and then you pull it out, and then that blocks the port. That blocks the port from somebody being able to slot in, again, Malduino, bad USB, whatever else, and it also, you know, keeps people from using that kill USB or that USB kill. Again, there are hackers, and then there are a-holes. You got to worry about everybody. Just like I talk about the crackheads from a criminal justice standpoint, you also have just the a-holes in the hacker world. There's, what is it called? It's the USB kill or the kill USB. Anyway, there's this little USB device you can buy. I have no idea why this is legal. I have no idea why it's legal. You can buy this thing. Basically what happens is a little device, you plug it into a USB port. What happens is USB offers power, so USB 2.0 and up offers power. So the power comes into this little USB kill device. It then powers up a capacitor. So the capacitor in there keeps storing more and more and more and more electricity until it gets to a certain level. So basically it gets this large amount of electricity, at which point it triggers and sends all that electricity straight back into the computer. It's a penetration testing tool. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I wish I could actually bring up the web. Oh, it's hilarious. It's just so horrible. They sell this thing as like a testing. I have no idea what you're testing. I want to see how secure your window is. I'm going to take a brick and I'm going to throw it through the window. Oh, look, I threw a brick through your window. I guess your window isn't very secure. Like, who doesn't think, like, just jamming as much electricity as possible on a USB connection is going to fry something? Anyways, but this is something that you might consider. Again, when you think about your particular environment, using these USB port blockers on the desktops and laptops within your environment, that might be a bridge too far. These things are actually stupidly expensive. You can use rubber cement. Again, you can either buy these for like $8 a piece, no lie, or you can use rubber cement. Either one works. Again, in a normal desktop environment, this may not make a lot of sense, but something to be thinking about. If you have computerized equipment, again, in this IoT world, you may have equipment that you don't think of as a computer per se, that is a computer that might be vulnerable to these types of attacks. Let's imagine that you have a multifunction device, again, a printer, scanner, basically a Xerox machine or Kyocera, whatever the hell they're called nowadays. Again, with a Kyocera, that's one of those things where that's a $5,000 device, and if somebody went to be a Yahoo and just plug in one of these USB kill devices into it, it could cause a lot of damage. So something you might think about is, in that particular device, put in one of these USB locks just to keep people from doing anything stupid. Again, a lot of equipment has some kind of like USB diagnostic connection, and so they may have one USB connection per device, and you might be like, okay, this is public facing. Somebody may want to pretend to be a hacker and destroy this damn thing, so let's put a little USB blocker in there. You can also do things, again, from a security standpoint. Remember, with a lot of desktop computers, the front USB ports, usually there's a cable that goes from the front and connects to the motherboard. If you simply unplug that, those front USB ports are now worthless. And again, that's one of the things to be thinking about with the whole USB thing, is again, in the modern world, in our modern environment, how valuable is USB? Now again, don't get me wrong, 10 years ago, USB was the greatest thing around. I love USB. I'm not anti-USB. But again, you've got Bluetooth, you got Bluetooth keyboards, you got Bluetooth mice, you got the file server, you've got all these other kinds of things going on. It is the vulnerability that the USB port presents, is that worth it in the modern world? One of the interesting things, this company, actually called Lindy, Lindy, you should probably go and take a look at it. Expensive, stupidly expensive. I never want to hear another person give me crap about owning Macs. Holy crap, when you see some of these things, I'm not lying, those little USB port blockers there, those are like $8 a piece. It's $8 for 3 cents of plastic. Anyway. But one of the things I also think was interesting that they had that same type of deal, but only for also for switches and networking equipment. Again, you think about this from a cybersecurity standpoint. You think about this if you have a stable infrastructure, so that you have your servers, you know what servers you have, you know what networking equipment you have. Basically, you set up your infrastructure, and more or less your infrastructure should stay how it is. One of the ways you can keep people from plugging crap in willy-nilly to your switch is if you use these little network port blockers. Basically just slot those things in, and now it is no longer easy for somebody just to connect something into that switch. Those are actually pretty cool. Then past that, again, when you start thinking about security and securing your devices, you have server boxes. So again, remember, crackheads don't do spec checks. They don't know what the hell they're stealing. And you know one of the things you don't want to have? You don't want to have the crackheads steal your digital for surveillance system. Seen that. Right? They don't know the difference between a digital surveillance system and a high-end gaming computer. It's all crack to them. So one of the things to be thinking about, right? Because that's the thing, like a lot of times people think about they think about server rooms, and they think about racks, and they think about when they have enough equipment. But if they have one Active Directory server, or one digital surveillance system, or whatever else, a lot of times they don't really think about physically securing that one computer. And again, it's something that you should do, and that's where you have these server boxes. You got all kinds of server boxes, depending on the size of the server that you're dealing with. So this is a desktop unit. We used to sell these. So basically, what you do is this is a metal box. In the bottom of it, there's holes. So you literally drill the metal box to the floor. You then slot in your server. You connect all the cables that need to go to it. You then lock it up, and now it's a complete pain in the ass to steal. Again, crackheads aren't going to spend a lot of time and energy trying to steal your equipment. Same type of thing is true. You got more of something that goes into like more of a telephone system closet. So maybe if you have a switch, you lock that in there, something like that. You have one of these. You have simple boxes. So again, if you have this is like a 2U box right here, you actually screw this to the wall. And again, you can put your surveillance system, you can put your file server, whatever else into that kind of box. And then you have this kind of box, again, another kind of box. They're all metal boxes. Stupidly expensive. Holy crap. I think this box is $350. This is a 2U box, steel box that you screw to the wall. I do believe that is $350 from a company called Black Box. But again, it's worth it from a security standpoint. Again, one of those things to be thinking about. Then, of course, there's server cabinets. One of the big things from a security standpoint with server cabinets is you want lockable doors on your server cabinet. So again, what happens if somebody comes in to your server room? Again, you want multiple layers of security. They have to get through the front door. They have to figure out where the hell the server room is. They have to get into the server room. They then have to get into the server rack itself. The more layers you have, the more secure your equipment is going to be. So one of the big things is actually put doors onto your server racks and then make sure that those doors are locked so that people can't go in and screw with your equipment. Then past that, we now have cages. This is awesome. This is awesome. Again, I don't care about Bitcoin. This is how weird I am. I do not give a crap about Bitcoin. Cages, I think, are freaking amazing. So I have this story back in the day. I talk about this when I worked in the enterprise world, and I went to our Pittsburgh office in the enterprise world, and basically as a new MCSE, a new computer person, I was mad. I was angry. Because basically the mop buckets were being stored in the server room. So they had a server room, pretty good, like $30,000 telephone system, pretty expensive network system, racks, the whole 9 yards, like a professional server room that they happened to store the mop buckets in. So anyways, the story, as I always say, is just as a big bad, IT person, I walked into the manager's office and I said, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable from a security standpoint. We cannot have mop buckets in the same room as a server. They need to be segregated. That needs to be a server room. And I still remember the manager looking at me, smiling, being like, well, okay. So the thing is, I've been the manager of this building for 3 years. And I have not found any other room in this building where I can put the mop buckets. So Eli, just as soon as you show me the room that I don't know about in this building where I can store the mop buckets, I will be more than happy to get my mop buckets out of your server room. Yeah, real world. Real world is not what they tell you in the books. But what I think is cool now is we have all this fancy, cool equipment. Not really not really newfangled, not really high tech, just actually absolutely useful, where you can actually now partition rooms. So if you have a room that's also being used as a utility closet or whatever else, you can actually partition those rooms off relatively easily. They have these like 2-walled cages that you can create. They just have these single 1-wall things, right? So imagine you have a room, part of the room is used for office supplies. You put up this 1-wall thing with a door in it, and then you can segregate off the back of it for your server room to add extra security there, right? If somebody, if the cleaning person comes in, they can't figure out where to plug in their vacuum cleaner. This way, they don't unplug one of your servers to plug in the vacuum cleaner, right? And the price, again, I don't know, 5 foot width, 8 foot height. 3-foot door comes out to about $1,200 for this particular model, which again, in the corporate world, ain't nothing but a thing. I do want you folks to understand, anybody that's going to get into cybersecurity, anybody that's going to get into the IT world, if you think a MacBook Pro is expensive, you don't understand how expensive technology really is. MacBook Pros are the least of your expenses in the real business world. Other things to be thinking about, if you're worried about your devices, is basically things like anti-theft cables or anti-theft clamps. So again, if you're in an environment where it does have a high property crime rate, again, the longer you can force somebody to be in an environment while they're trying to steal something, the more difficult it's going to be, the more likely it is that they're not going to walk off with your equipment. So obviously they have the cabling, right? So if you have computers, desktop computers, and they're supposed to stay in the same area, you can basically put the locking cable on your computer screen, whatever else. Wrap that around your desk, makes it harder for people to steal. Also, things to think about is like clamps for a laptop. I had this happen with one of my clients, again, Baltimore. So he had his laptop with his QuickBook, all of his information for clients and all that. So the secretary was gone that day. So basically, people would walk into his office. There's like the secretary reception area, and there's a little desk there and all that. So he had just been sitting there, right? The secretary called out that day, so he was just sitting there answering the phones, doing that kind of stuff as he was tip-tapping away. Basically, he needed to go to the bathroom, so he went to the bathroom. Crackhead came in, grabbed his laptop, and ran away. Yep. And again, QuickBooks, client information. It was all backed up. We were able to get him a new computer and get him back up and running in a couple of days. Again, but the important thing here from a cybersecurity standpoint is not simply that the physical equipment left, but all of the data left with it too, which is a bad thing. Let's see here. Then you have lighting. One of the big things to be thinking about from a physical security standpoint, this kind of goes more into deterrence too, is lighting. A lot of people don't think about lighting their facilities. If you have nice bright lights around your doors, around other areas, it just makes people feel very weird when they're trying to break into your facility and do something stupid. Again, basically what deterrence is deterrence is a psychological game. It's trying to psychologically manipulate an attacker to make them feel uncomfortable, and so things like bright lights are a useful way to do that. Then there's finally security systems. So this is something that you should be thinking about for your environment, again, if somebody breaks in, but not only if somebody breaks in, things like environmental sensors too. Basically having sensors one way or the other, everything from glass break to whatever else, and then thinking about what is going to happen when those sensors go off. So if the water sensor goes off in your server room, if the glass break sensor goes off in your retail facility or whatever else, how is that going to be responded to? Is that going to go back to a central like ADT type security solution where they're going to call the police or whatever for you? Are you going to have something that is more in-house, more customized, so you customize how the notifications go? And then the other thing to be thinking about is what does this security process look like? Again, if ADT gets called and then they call whoever the point of contact is, what is the process past that? Who gets woken up in the middle of the night? Who is the one that has to call the insurance company and all that kind of thing? What is the process for trying to ascertain what has been compromised, that whole thing? So again, process is one of the big issues there. And think about how the notifications and response work. And so, the end. I think I'm going to put the end slides in, just so I know finally it's the end. I made it. I taught you about operational security. I taught you about physical security. I gave you stories. I gave you so many stories. But anyways, these are things that you need to be thinking about, again, from a cybersecurity standpoint, from an owner standpoint, from an IT professional standpoint, and the whole 9 yards. One of the big things, again, I want you to think about here is realizing how multidisciplinary security really is. Again, when I talk about this whole relationship thing, so many people are so hyper-focused. Again, I see that with a lot of YouTubers out there selling cybersecurity, doing their cybersecurity videos, and it's all like hyper, this code or hyper intrusion detection systems or whatever. That's what they're all focused on. But again, the big thing to be thinking about is when you're dealing with security in the real world, it's a multidisciplinary thing. You need lots of different people to be involved. Again, think about this. Do you think about the landscaping for your office building when you're thinking about cybersecurity? Are you thinking about the positioning of the bushes in your environment from a cybersecurity standpoint? that is something that you should be thinking about. Again, from a facility standpoint, whether you need to build out a server room, whether you need to put in one of these cages, whatever else, you need to be talking with people to understand what the regulations in your area is. Again, like I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina. What you're able to do in Asheville here versus what I can do in Buncombe County, which is like 2 miles that way, are massively different, right? So if you're thinking about creating an office, you know, do you put it in Asheville or do you put it slightly outside of Asheville? Do you put it in Baltimore? Do you put it in... And these are all the kinds of things you have to be thinking about. And as with much of this stuff, it's not just simply TCP/IP and all of that kind of thing. So anyways, that's the idea with operational security and physical security. And we also talked about deterrence and surveillance. Do you remember, surveillance unto itself is not security. You can sit back and replay the day your company got screwed over and over and over again. If you don't have a response plan, it's not really going to matter. And so some of those things to be thinking about. Again, one of the big things to really be thinking about, though, when you're thinking about security, is that you want to prevent events from happening. So many times in the modern world, again, there's this whole ego thing that's going on, and we want to punish people, right? If you screw with me, I'm gonna punish you. Right? So there's all this idea about punishments, all this idea about after the fact. Here's the problem. What you have to realize, right, is at that point your company has already been damaged, right? Whether there is downtime from the damage and so you've lost because of that, whether it's reputational damage, the fact that your company was successfully attacked, even if you caught them later, right? That may be reputational brand damage. You want to keep the attack from ever occurring, right? It's not about punishing the bad guys. Again, it's one of those psychology things that's really difficult to get through people's heads. It's not about punishing the bad guys. But what happens if the bad guys just walk away? Well, if the bad guy just walks away and hasn't done any damage to your company or organization, fine. Yes, sometimes it's somebody else's responsibility. So anyways, just one of those things to be thinking about, because a lot of times there's like this punitive thing, like, yeah, if anybody does something, like, yeah, no, by the time that they're doing something, you've already lost the fight. So anyways, as always, I enjoyed doing this particular class. Again, as I say, these classes are free to the end user, which is not actually free. I do have to pay for all the things I have to pay for this office space with this multi-layered security. I have to pay for this, the crappy ISP connection. So if you would like to support what I do think about throwing some money down in the donor box link or whatever crowdfunding link we have around this video. Again, I enjoyed doing this particular class, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one, and hopefully at some point, once we are actually in the post-COVID world in 2024 or so, I hope to see you here in Asheville, North Carolina. See you all later.